I am being presented with the Entrepreneur of the Year award when the chart of my fund appears on the screen behind me. And instead of a fireworks display of numbers, it falls like an elevator that has broken off in the middle of the night. The room is as quiet as a bank after the alarm, and only the host is trying to choke out a joke that doesn't reach any smiles. The phone in my pocket vibrates for so long that I feel like it's growing into my body, and in the short list of notifications is a letter from the auditor with a red heading immediately. The cameras film my face. I hold a crystal statuette in my hand, and the numbers behind me sink even deeper, and at that moment I realize something has been pulled out from under my floor, and it's not a carpet. I take a step towards the microphone, as if nothing has happened, but another protocol is already working in my head. Rollback, checks, trust in a circle. Thank you, I say, and at the same time, barely covering my smartphone with my palm, I open the letter. The auditors write about anomalous transfers, insider access, and systematic splitting of payments through charitable subaccounts. Under each line is a signature. The chief accountant is my cousin Orest, the man to whom I once gave the spare key to my parents' house along with the secret code to the safe, because in our family we did not lock the door on our relatives. The award. Here, please, the assistant whispers, and I obediently place the statuette on the pedestal, smile at the photographers like a trained dog, and suddenly I see my father's gaze in the fourth row, the same one he gave me when I first said that I would not go to the factory, but would make money out of thin air. A gaze without faith, but with patience. After the scene, they arrange a corridor of handshakes for me, and I count the seconds until the first blow. It comes flying in from the left, a message from Orestes. It's not what it seems. Can we talk? Then a second, from a journalist we once had coffee with before her tough interviews. There's evidence that your foundation is botching its own reports with fictitious grants. Comment. And a third from my mother. Don't trust anyone, son. Daddy's watching. I press call for Orestes, and he picks up on the first ring. It was a manhole cover, he says quickly. You're being framed. I've seen deals since you were just recruiting. Someone older. Someone who sat at the table next to you. Names, I say. Not here. I open the door to my office on the back floor of the hotel where the ceremony is taking place, and before I turn on the light, I see an envelope on the table, narrow as a sentence. Black pen, someone else's handwriting. You should remember where you started. Inside is a flash drive and a photo. Me, 20 years old, in the basement of a former DK, where my first partner and I were counting cash for the sale of old servers that were officially written off for the education of young people. I remember that night, the smell of dust, the excitement, and how I told him, one more year like this, and we'll be at the top. He smiled then and touched my shoulder. Now his hand in the photo is cut off by the light, but I know that gesture. And I know that he has returned as a shadow in my office. There's a knock on the door. My fiancée Alina comes in, her gaze always showing condescension, but never fear, and now there's only cold interest. Is that true? She asks. I'm silent, because I don't have the right to an easy answer. Tell me something. I'm not beaten by my enemies. I've been beaten by my own. I answer. Then tell me the names. I'll start with my own. She looks at me as if she's seeing me for the first time. Are we postponing the wedding? Her voice is even. No. I say automatically, and only then do I realize that my no isn't about the wedding, but about surrender. She places the ring on the table next to the flash drive. You love victories more than people. Maybe today you'll have a chance to prove that falsely. Or truthfully. She leaves, the doors softly closing in on the silence, and I'm left with two things that don't lie. The metal of the ring and the plastic of the flash drive. I sit down, insert the drive into my laptop, and see a folder simply titled Beginning. An inner voice whispers something I've been avoiding for years. Not every victory is legal, and every shadow has a father. I press enter and feel my past enter the room, sit across from me, and place its bill on the table. And for the first time in a long time, I don't have a ready price. When the first file opened, I felt my heart rise to my throat. It was a contract, an old one, dated the same year we had just started. Our signatures were there, but between them was another, forged or real, I didn't know, but the name was loud. A man who then sat on the bank's board and had access to government funds. I remember that evening. We signed the papers in the basement, over a bottle of cheap wine, swearing that we would never involve third parties. And now this third lay in my folders, like a ghost, patiently waiting for its moment. I felt like all my connections, all my awards and titles, just a facade, under which a rotten foundation had long since grown. When Orestes called, I already knew. He was part of this scenario, whether voluntarily or by force. "We are being led to the abyss," he said in a trembling voice. "I've seen the accounts that go back to the early years. Do you think I was the one splitting the payments? No. They used your blind trust to make you the main culprit." "Who are they?" I asked. There was silence on the other end. And then came the one word I didn't want to hear. "Your first partner." My chest tightened. I hadn't heard his name in years. He had disappeared just as we were getting up, leaving me with a share of the business and the phrase, "From now on, I'll do it myself." I had built an empire on the ruins of that betrayal and convinced myself that I would never let another person's hand in my pockets again. And now it turned out that my entire tall tower was just a continuation of his game. That same evening, the media exploded. On the main sites, Fund of the Year or the biggest scam of the decade. The same journalist I had once spoken to so openly was sitting in the studio, and she smiled just enough for me to understand that my words had become a weapon against me. "We have evidence that the main character of this financial thriller knew how to falsify from a young age. We have witnesses. We have his own brother," she said, and I saw Orestes live on air, sitting opposite her, sweating and repeating the prepared phrases. I didn't want to, but I can't keep quiet. It was systematic. It went on for years. I shouted into the empty room. "You said you were forced." But the TV didn't answer. Partners called, demanding explanations. Some turned off the phone. Others simply hung up. I lost my investments overnight. And even those who had called me a market genius yesterday were now turning their backs on me like lepers. The most painful thing was seeing the message from Alina. It consisted of one line. "I can't live next to a person who always lies, even to himself." I reread it over and over again, and each time it cut deeper. Then I realized that I had lost not only money and reputation. I had lost my own support. Because if even the closest people see you as a thief, what's the point of proving your innocence to the world? But something else struck me the most. At night, I received a photo, not from an anonymous account, but from an old email account that my first partner and I had created in our youth. He was in the photo, gray-haired, a stranger, but with the same sly squint. On the sheet of paper in his hand it was written, "You built everything with my methods. Now build with my downfall." For the first time in many years, I felt real fear. Not for money, not for a name, for being led in chains again to where I once agreed to a small lie in the name of a great victory. And now this chain was squeezing my neck. I knew this was only the beginning, and the worst was yet to come. I didn't sleep for the third night. The flash drive burned like a hot ember in my jacket pocket, but I didn't dare open the last folder. I was afraid that I would find there the final proof of my guilt, or worse, confirmation that I had always been controlled like a puppet. I walked in circles around the office, staring at the ceiling, listening to my heart count its beats. And suddenly there was a knock on the door, timid but persistent. I opened it. Standing in front of me was the same journalist who had recently torn me apart on television. Her face was haggard, and in her hands was a black folder. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded, although everything inside me was screaming, "This is a trap." She sat down opposite me and put the folder on the table. "You think I'm your enemy," she said, "but I'm a witness. I've seen documents that they haven't even shown you. Your partner, the first one, he didn't just come back. He's been working in the shadows for a long time through offshore companies, through shell funds. He's been using your name to legalize his own deals. And now he's given you his own evidence." I didn't believe it. "Why are you helping? You've got your ratings, your airtime. What else do you need?" I asked. She looked away. "Because I see him cleaning everything up for himself. And I'm tired of being a tool. For him, you're the first perfect student, the victim he raised to destroy later. And if he wins, we've all lost." She opened the folder. There were correspondence, bank transfers, copies of agreements where my name was next to his. But the amounts, signatures, even the dates were all fake. Forgeries, made subtly, taking into account all my real steps. "He's been preparing this for years," she said. "Your every move was his script." At that moment, my walls seemed to open. I saw not just a conspiracy, but a map of my life that someone was drawing for me. Every victory I had was a continuation of his plan. Every loss was part of a great chessboard. What do you want from me? I could barely say. The journalist leaned forward. I want you to fight. I have access to his servers. There is data that will prove that it is he. But you have to decide. Will you go to the end, or will you run away into your shadow? Because after this, there will be no turning back. I closed my eyes and saw Elena, her ring on the table. My father, who was watching with distrust. Orestes, who had been forced to betray. And I realized that if I gave up now, I would remain only a memory of my own strength. I opened the last folder on the flash drive. Inside was a video file. It showed me, 20 years old, next to my first partner. He was looking into the camera and saying, "This is just the beginning. One day this guy will rise high, and then I will come for mine." His words were full of confidence, and I felt a chill run down my spine. This was no accident. This was a planned hunt. I paused and looked at the journalist. "Okay," I said. "If he played me, then now I will play his game. But until the end, all or nothing." A spark flashed in her eyes. "Then hold on, because he is always one step ahead. But for the first time, you have a chance to break his rules." At that moment, I felt that for the first time in a long time, I had an ally. And with him, a key that could open the door to the truth, or lock me in the darkest cage forever. I chose not cunning. I chose open play, because I could no longer bear the thought that my life was someone's dramatic production, where I was just a pawn. I decided to use everything I still had. My voice, my face, my memory, and the vulnerability that I had previously hidden behind the armor of success. The journalist and I came up with a plan, a public briefing, where I would personally tell about all the known facts and at the same time call to account those who manipulated my name, propose an independent audit, and file a complaint with law enforcement agencies with the material she had provided. It was a risk that could either put an end to my career or cut through the web of lies. I understood that sometimes you have to set fire to your own house to drive the rats out, but the thought of losing Elena, whom I could still keep with the truth, and Orestes, whom I could save, gave me no right to be indecisive. During the press conference, I spoke at length, warming my voice with truth and the coldness of facts pulled from servers and accounting transactions. And when the journalist threw a copy of the agreement with a forged signature on the table, the world fell silent, as if the entire hall had inhaled simultaneously. I was talking not just about finances, I was talking about the principles that once forced me to leave the factory and make my first mistake, which turned into a systemic lie. I was talking about the fear that gives rise to tiny compromises, and how they grow into a system that devours people. Some in the hall were crying. Some were laughing. Some were leaving. And at that moment, I felt another wall of my old empire fall with every word, either a forged truth or a ghost factory. After the conference came the answer I had not dared to hope for a long time. A message from an anonymous source with evidence that the first partner was preparing a large-scale operation, as well as a list of names who were at the epicenter: officials, bankers, assistants, those who were supposed to turn a blind eye. Only a court could accept this verification, and I could already see my name burning in the headlines again, but this time accompanied by the phrases, "regains control," and "initiates investigation." I understood that this was not just a victory. It was a sortie from the abyss into which I had driven myself with years of compromise. Orestes came last. We met in the same basement where it had all begun, and he stood there as before, only without the strain in his eyes that always characterizes a hunted beast. "You could have gone quietly," he whispered. "I know. Maybe," I replied. "But if I had gone quietly, someone else would have taken my place and done the same thing. I cannot allow the path of my mistake to become a template for others." His hand trembled. He looked at me, and, unable to bear it, he fell to his knees, like a man who asks forgiveness not to atone, but to save himself from himself. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was afraid. They said that if I didn't agree, they would kill my family." His voice broke into one of those whistles of sighs that I had once considered foreign. And here came a choice that would define not only me, but also all those who watched us through the screens. Punish him, expel him, hand him over to the investigation with all rights and without mercy, or use his knowledge, come to an agreement, risking a compromise that could dampen both me and the real truth. I saw destinies weighing between revenge and redemption, between the law and a human's folding conscience. I knew that if I handed Orestes over to the investigation with a cold sense of victory, then perhaps I would once again start the mechanism that generates new Orestes. If I hushed everything up for the sake of a quick exit, then my victory would turn into a new system of silence. I chose a different path. I offered Orestes to work with me openly, giving him a chance to redeem himself through true revelation and assistance to the investigation, but on the condition of complete transparency and without any conspiracies in the shadows. It was a step that could have destroyed me completely, but more than that, it would have restored a base for truth. We signed the paper on the table, not as a formal document, but as a testament. We are starting from scratch, but we are starting honestly. And as I stepped out into the night air, I felt not celebration but a sense of battle, because knowing that you have made the right choice does not mean that it will make you safe, but it does mean that you are no longer afraid to look yourself in the eye. As I left the courtroom, where I had stood before the cameras and given testimony that had broken old bonds, I felt as if I were walking on thin ice over an abyss that opened up with every step, and every ice crack was my choice. Ahead was not a clear road, but a field strewn with the fragments of other people's decisions and my own compromises, and I knew that there was no ultimate security. There was only the consequence of the choice you made this time. People came up to me and said different things. Some thanked me, some gave me a look full of suspicion, and some simply walked by as if nothing had happened. And in that silence there was truth. The truth that changes do not happen instantly. They must be lived. I got into the car, looked in the mirror, saw my face, which yesterday I considered immobile and unshakable, and now saw there the traces of sleepless nights and worries, and thought that wealth is not only the amount in the account, it is the amount of what you are willing to give up to remain yourself. In the evening, Elena came not with the silence of a divorce, but with a quiet proposal. Let's take a break. Let's see if you can be who you said you would be. I didn't want to look weak, but I answered sincerely, without embellishment, because this time the truth was necessary. I don't know if I will have enough time to earn your trust again, but I am ready to work every day, every hour, I said. She took my hand and said, we'll see. And in this ordinary human moment was the whole point. Not a grand gesture, not a grand gesture, just a desire to be there when you start to pay for the past. Several months passed. The investigation continued. Some names turned out to be more deeply involved than we had expected, some clean of compromise, but with traces of their own mistakes that they were afraid to admit. Orest worked with the investigation, and his confessions helped to expose several links, but he never returned to me as before. What happened left a mark on him and a deep desire to atone. A journalist who became my ally published a series of materials that not only restored part of my reputation, but also posed a more important question to the audience. How often are we willing to forgive success for the sake of truth, and how often truth for the sake of success? I sat at night on the roof of my old office, looking out over the city that had once seemed to me a stage for brilliance, but now a complex fabric of people and their stories, and thought about the dilemma that had haunted me since day one. Whether it was possible to be rich and honest at the same time, whether truth inevitably devours success, or whether success is always born of compromise. I realized that the answer is not in the absolute, but in what you are willing to pay every day. If you choose truth, you pay with freedom from illusions and the risk of ruin. If you choose success at any cost, you pay with the eternal inner voice that reminds you of every mistake. And in this balance, I chose a life with cracks, but with an open face. My final was not a triumph in the classical sense. I did not return everything. I did not cleanse every shadow. Some people are gone forever, and some are only partially recovered. But another currency has appeared in my life, the clarity of my own conscience, which weighs more than any contract. And when I am sometimes asked, can the past be redeemed? I do not answer categorically, because I do not believe in instant redemptions. I say, you can only buy one thing, a chance at the truth. And then, pay every day. And this message is perhaps the most important. The truth does not relieve you of responsibility instantly. It only gives you a tool, bitter but honest, to start. I remain a person with mistakes, but now with a choice, and this choice is my new property.